All right, we're going to get started. Thank you for joining us for this kind of special. Herding all these cats was not easy. Some very special guests today with us. So I want to thank them and thank you for being part of this special session about the burn survivor's voice in One Voice. And you'll learn more about One Voice and the effort that's happening later. The Phoenix Society has been involved for over 50 years in the idea of prevention. Thank you, Amar. Being involved in prevention in one way or another. Unfortunately, our community is kind of the first ones on the scene, if you will. We're there when this starts. So we're strong advocates of the need for public education about the risk of fire. Many of us maybe didn't have that knowledge before our injury, but we do now, and we're one of your strongest advocates, I think, for fire prevention and the public health risk of fire. Also, many of us have been living with a burn injury, and we understand the power of the acute care team and how they help us survive. We're surviving burn injuries now that we never used to. So there are other needs, and if we're partnering with the healthcare professionals, we can help you understand those needs and those gaps in your care. So when we think of this team that is here with me today, we are interfacing with you all the time. We kind of are at the beginning of the fire, and we're at the end, as you heard today in open mic. We're carrying that story forward. We're carrying kind of the burden, but also the triumph and what is possible after a burn injury. And the fire service that comes into that has closure as well. So there's just a synergy between all of us in this continuum of fire, burns, the care, and the healing of it. So this really panel was going off Dr. Lori Moore's work in trying to bring the fire service together to have a common agenda and focus on trying to decrease fire and the impact of fire in America. And why wouldn't we be excited about that, right? So when I saw the summit last year, and they're having another one next week, and I think you can register virtually, our voice needs to be part of that, in my opinion. And so we want to kind of engage our community about how we can get behind the priorities of the fire service. And that's bringing all the fire service organizations together to focus on a few priorities. The other missing link here, I think, though, is tying that with the burn community, the burn professional care community, the burn centers, the care providers, who have also another powerful voice about why we need fire prevention, why we need better quality care, why we need reimbursement for some of the treatments that are really critical for us that we don't have today. So there is an advocacy loop here that the Phoenix Society is trying to kind of tie all together. So this panel is really to kind of educate us as a community about some of those needs by working together. Our motto is moving forward together, or I think that is what it is, something around that team. But collaboration is really where it's at. And so this wonderful group of people, I've had the honor to work with Ron Sarnicki, Lorraine, Vicky's been on our board. Tom has been, I don't even want to tell you where Tom's been with me. We've had a lot of fun and done a lot of work together. Dr. Curtado, I'm really anxious to work with him and the ABA as we continue to build our relationship. And last but not least, you'll hear from two wonderful advocates that have traveled the journey from kind of that victim to survivor to thriver to advocate. So without further ado, I'm going to let you hear from everybody, and hopefully we'll have time for questions and some comments afterwards. So next up is Dr. Lehman.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm vertically challenged, so I'm going to move this a little closer. if that's all right. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lori Moore-Merrell. I'm the U.S. Fire Administrator, and the U.S. Fire Administration is part of FEMA, and so we're really glad to have been invited to be here today. What an honor. I got to listen to some of the open mic stories, and I can tell you, all of you have heard them before. You know the hope, you know the inspiration. I hadn't experienced that, and so I'm really grateful to have been able to be here today to hear more about that. And you know, when I see the Phoenix Society, the first thing that comes to mind, and I've been in the fire service a long time, but I always think about the bird, right? The mythical bird, that out of the ashes we rise. And that's what kept coming through my head today, is that yes, you have risen. And that's what I just wanted to say to many of the survivors. Out of the ashes you rise. You bring hope. You bring inspiration. And that's what I heard this morning. And I'm really grateful to have had a few minutes to listen to the stories that were shared. And I know there are so many more of those stories. And you know, that really translates not just for the individuals, but for us as a fire service as a whole. Out of tragedy, we have good things. We bring hope. I can tell you that we've had some very tragic fires in the last couple of years. We had one in the Bronx that just over a year ago, 17 people lost their lives. So the survivors give us hope, but so do those who did not survive. It's for them we fight too. 4 days prior to that, 12 people died in a home that had been retrofitted for multiple families that they shouldn't have. Philadelphia. And just a couple of months ago, we saw a wildfire sweep through Lahaina on the island of Maui, where we've had 100 or more people who perished there. And so we cannot stop fighting. We cannot stop growing and bringing hope and bringing change from tragedy. And so we can't ever, you know, in the fire service, we often say, never waste a tragedy. And so that's what I say to you. Never waste a tragedy. Out of that comes hope. Out of the ashes we rise. And so with that, I really just want to give a shout out also to the firefighters who respond to these events. You see, that's who the USFA really represents, are our responders, our firefighters who are there, who suppress the fire, who do the rescues, who are there for you. And I know many of them stay on. There's a lot of firefighters in this room today, and I'm really grateful for the way that they step up and carry on that job beyond the rescue, beyond the fire extinguishment. What's next for them? And they become part of your story. They become part of your hope. And so I'm really grateful for those firefighters who do that. And you know, in the fire service, to know where we're going, and I really appreciate Amy and the One Voice and Miss Vicki and really bringing our One Voice together. But to understand where that comes from, we have to understand where we've been, because just like you, we have a story. And that story actually started with someone recognizing the fire problem in our nation. Back in 1947, President Truman called together the first conference on fire prevention and control at a time when we were having thousands of fire fatalities and hundreds of thousands of injuries. And from that, years later, we saw, and in fact, 50 years ago this year, a report called America Burning. If you've never read that report, you should. 50 years ago this year, America Burning told the story of what was happening with fire in America. And then 1 year later, out of that report, the United States Fire Administration was established. And so today, we are able to lead forward as we support our first responders to make sure they're prepared, they're ready to not only help prevent the fires, but to respond when we're not successful in preventing them. And so what we have done is to bring together, in the last year, in fact, bring together the nation's fire service, the leaders from all of our national organizations, the IFF, who I know is in this room, the IFC, who's in this room, the National Volunteer Fire Council, the NFPA, the National Sprinkler Association, and I can keep going on and on and on with our national organizations who have said yes. When I asked them, can we, I don't want you to set aside your mission, but can we come together and move forward with one voice? And that's where the One Voice came from. And I think it was Miss Vicky actually who said, oh, we can do this, and it's like speaking with one voice. And so we coined that. We embraced the one voice. And I'll tell you where our mission lies today. Our mission lies today in the fact that we have wildfire that is becoming more and more prominent. The unfortunate part is that Maui won't be the last. And so we have to talk about wildfire. We have to talk about the potential impact on our communities. These are not wildland fires. These are community fires. Many of the people there, they didn't have a chance because we had not mitigated, because we had not prepared, because we had not taught them how to evacuate properly. We have to talk about recruitment. You know, very soon, we're going to have a firefighter shortage in this nation if we don't get a handle on this. We're having difficulty recruiting firefighters. And so if that's your inspiration and you want to say, I want to help with that, we want you. The other thing is firefighter cancer. 75% of our firefighters and occupational deaths today are attributed to cancer because of their exposures on the job. We have to get in front of that. And then we talk about firefighter behavioral health. We have a lot of our firefighters who can't unsee what they've experienced. The rescues, or even the rescues they couldn't complete, and the impact on them. And so we have to start to build our mental resilience in our ranks. And so we're focused on that. And then finally, building codes and standards. You know, the way we can change the risk and the fire risk in this nation is if we could get our states to adopt and implement the actual national building codes and standards rather than just picking the pieces and making it less expensive, they think. We have to step up, and we're going to count on you too, because it can't just be the fire service one voice, right? It has to be all of us as one voice. And so as the Phoenix Society, as burn survivors, as advocates, stand with us with one voice, because together it's going to take all of us to change the trajectory of fire in this nation. Because as of today, America is still burning. And the unfortunate part is we're still losing 7 people a day lose their lives in their homes to fire, where there should be the safest. 7 a day. 1 is too many, and that's not even addressing those who are surviving. I don't want to add to your ranks. I want us to stop the fires that are occurring. Stand with us with one voice, and we look forward to having you become part of this movement. Thanks for letting me share with you today.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lorraine Carley, Vice President of Outreach and Advocacy for the National Fire Protection Association. I've been associated with the Phoenix Society for almost 18 years now, since pretty much the first day I walked into my job at NFPA. And World Burn Congress is one of the most important and impactful events that I do in my role at NFPA, but also in my role as a human being. The stories, the camaraderie, it is just so uplifting, but also so motivating for what we all can do together. So I'm going to pick up on one of the themes that Dr. Laurie talked about, and thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts on one of those key elements that she mentioned. There are more than 300 codes and standards that influence fire and life safety in the built environment. We can create safer communities by ensuring that these codes and standards are in place and are enforced. This model works. According to NFPA research, the most successful recipe for fire safety in that built environment is the implementation of fire safety technologies through mandated codes and standards and enforced through a system of checks and balances. If we look at specific types of buildings, such as schools or healthcare facilities, high-rise buildings, and creating code requirements around those specific types of buildings, we've seen that they have had a significant impact against loss. The use of smoke alarms mandated by codes and standards and the continued public education about their importance was the biggest single factor that contributed to the loss of reducing fire deaths over the past decades. But there's more work to be done. As we said, America is still burning. Today's fires are fast. We see that time and time again. You can have as little as 2 minutes to escape a home fire. Smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, fire sprinklers save lives. All codes require these, yet they're not everywhere that they should be. And we also know that fire disproportionately impacts our vulnerable populations, older adults, children, people of color, low-income populations, and people with disabilities. This is an equity issue. Safe housing and affordable housing should not be mutually exclusive thoughts. An NFPA study found that in buildings with fire sprinklers, the civilian fire death and injury rates were 89% and 27% lower. Communities who do not require sprinklers are allowing substandard homes to be built, and that is simply wrong. Nearly 3 out of home fire deaths are caused in properties without smoke alarms or smoke alarms that failed to operate. We need working smoke alarms in every home, no matter what type of home or no matter who lives there. Together, we can create safer communities by speaking up to ensure that codes and standards are used and enforced, especially in the wildland-urban interface, in areas where we see underserved and vulnerable populations. Now, next week is National Fire Protection Association's Fire Prevention Week. The theme this year is Cooking Safety Starts With You. Pay attention to prevention. The voice, as we have heard so often today and will continue to hear this week, the voice of the burn community is essential to the work that we do together to save lives and prevent injuries. Thank you for being a part of this effort. Thank you for being a part of my life that I do this work, and I appreciate every minute of the work we do together. Thank you.
It is such an honor to be here with you today. My name is Vicki Pritchett. I am the Vice President of Advocacy and Outreach for the National Fire Sprinkler Association, and it was indeed an honor to serve on the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors Board of Directors for 6 years. I remember my very first World Burn Congress. It was 2006. The city was Sacramento, California. Jim Dalton, who hired both Shane Ray and myself, and I do bring greetings from the president of NFSA, Shane Ray. He's sorry he couldn't be here with us, but he sent Shane and I to Sacramento because he wanted the National Fire Sprinkler Association to learn more about this community, and that we did. Such an eye-opening experience. I was so excited, and on the walk back to the hotel following the Walk of Remembrance, I can remember saying to Shane, do you get it? Do you get it? And he's looking at me like he normally does 90% of the time, like, what is this woman talking about? And he said, get what? And he said, I said, this is our why. This is why it's important. This is why our work matters. This is why we fight for fire sprinklers, because we know they've been around for over 100 years, y'all. They work. You heard Lorraine talk about the statistics from NFPA. To me, this is a no-brainer, right? But you know what changes when we engage you as advocates? The burn community is the game changer. Your voice is the difference maker when it comes to our conversation at the national level about codes and standards and their importance. A little bit of backstory. We talk about the National Minimum Building Code, and yes, fire sprinklers are included. And as Dr. Lori said, the states pick it out, except for Maryland, thank you, Chief Geraci, and California and the District of Columbia. But a backstory to that, it wouldn't be in the code without an advocate. A mother who had lost her daughter stood in front of a microphone just like this after listening to testimony after testimony of builders and building officials say, it just costs too much. We really wish we could do that, but it just costs too much. Karen Mann stepped to the mic and she said, the flowers at my daughter's funeral cost more than the fire sprinklers would have cost to protect that home. Just like this. It was a mic drop moment. So thank you to Karen Mann. All these years later, I remember that moment so defining. One of those defining moments, and I'm sure he's going to tell you more about it, so I will not steal his thunder. He's on our panel, Rob Feeney, survivor from the Station nightclub fire. During the ground rules for open mic this morning, I thought, hey, that was me, and I just didn't have Sam and Megan to give me the ground rules. But I can remember, Rob, waiting for you to land, picking you up, and not being certain what it was okay to say or not say. And I basically just said, hi, Rob, I'm so glad you're here, and you can tell me what you just tell me whatever you want to, or you can tell me nothing at all. It's gonna be okay. You remember that? He made a difference by testifying, and a code was changed in a city that now ensures that in Chattanooga, Tennessee, fire sprinklers are required. So that's one story. You all have so many stories. Justina Page is sitting there on the second row, a member of Common Voices. Your advocacy has saved lives, Justina. And when you talk about losing your 18-month-old son, Amos, people remember. And I'm so grateful that you are willing to open up your heart and share that story so that others don't have to live through it. Dr. Moore-Merrell has told us about Fire Service One Voice. It is indeed a movement, and we hope you join with us. There are so many ways for you to do so. I encourage you to reach out. Amy can connect you to us. Follow the U.S. Fire Administration's page. She's tracking fire deaths in real time, and you can see what our current stats are, including how many of those are children. Knowing that data helps you better tell your story, and we all need to stay up to speed. Thank you, Dr. Lori, for doing that so well. We know that you are all on social media, so we hope that you'll share hashtag Fire Service One Voice and say that you've joined with us today. There is indeed nothing better for me here on behalf of the NFSA. Our mission is to protect lives and property from fire through the widespread acceptance of the fire sprinkler concept. Y'all are our why, and we pledge to you that we will fight hard for you every single day. Thank you.
So good afternoon. My name is Ron Sarnicki, and I am currently the Executive Director of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. But prior to that, I was with the Prince George's County Fire and EMS Department, which we were in Prince George's County, as you saw this morning, and Chief Green brought some excellent comments. A little side note, not to do age, but I actually hired her when I was the fire chief in Prince George's County. So things evolve, and it's done well. And I, too, want to welcome you to what I've considered to be home for many of us. But I have to tell you that, I'm going to take just a second, go off script. My involvement with Phoenix Society was a result of my nephew being burned at a fundraiser, a fire department fundraiser. We did a lot with muscular dystrophy over the years. IFF is still involved, and we did a softball tournament in Prince George's County, and he was burned at one of the events. And about a year after his, well, let me back up, because Dr. Marion Jordan from the Burn Center here in D.C., phenomenal. I see some of my friends from the burn unit did a phenomenal job to help Tony kind of get on a better path. But I wanted to help Tony kind of in that life after. And so I, through Dr. Jordan, got engaged in the American Burn Association, ABA, served on some of their committees, and was at an ABA conference and looking for help for my nephew, and I stumbled upon a booth, Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, and this lady down the end of the table, Amy, was actually working the booth, and I said, "Hi, my name is Ron, my nephew's a burn survivor, I need your help." And we've been friends now for 30 years. Phenomenal journey. And of course, she sucked me into the board. I served as the board president for a few years, and as I'm sure Lorraine and Vicki and others could attest, you just can't say no. But the connection for me now is the topics that I'm really been asked to talk about are things that are part of this joint effort of all the national organizations: burns, suicide, and cancer. And those affect the fire service community, the firefighting community, just like that they affect the burn survivor community. And those are tough pieces to address and face. But when it comes to burns, one of the pieces I'm most proud of, after spending that time in the burn unit in DC and working with Dr. Jordan, we set a policy in Prince George's County that any firefighter that got burned, no matter what degree or level, they went to the burn unit, because we knew they would get the best of care. And oftentimes they go to a local hospital. That ER tries to do their best, but they just don't have the skill set needed. And so that became a policy throughout the greater Washington area. And I'm proud of that point, because that really made a difference for those firefighters and their recovery process. And as you heard, firefighters unfortunately get burned across our country every day. And the elements and the science related to that treatment, and the ABA does a lot with that. I learned a lot being a part of the committees there, is to provide the best level of burn care that you can get in those early days. And then the next piece to that, though, is the elements related to the behavioral health and the survivability and the long-term recovery and that journey that Amy talked about. And that's really where Phoenix Society does the most to make that happen. And there's been a couple of projects that we've worked together that pertain to those elements of suicide and behavioral health. And one of those was when the Charleston Super Sofa Store fire occurred. 9 firefighters died. The children of those firefighters are having a hard time re-engaging back into the school system. Phoenix Society came down, brought the journey back, and met with the school systems and provided that input to those teachers to help deal with those children. They weren't burned, but their fathers had died in that fire, to deal with that transition. And that began a discussion about behavioral health. Now, for the foundation, we got engaged with behavioral health through the IFF when 9/11 occurred. When those buildings collapsed, the foundation was asked to go to New York and provide support. And we reached out to the IFF, and we put joint teams together, working with an individual by the name of Frank Vito, who ran the counseling services unit for the FDNY. And Frank is probably one of the leading, I hate to use the word subject matter expert, but he is when it comes to behavioral health. And he's done a lot with the IFF and the development of their peer program. And there was a lot of pieces learned in the support when we brought over 200 firefighters from around the country to provide that peer support to the FDNY when the towers fell. And those lessons learned are still in place today. And that led to the development of a program we have called Stress First Aid. And it is intended to be a peer-based program to help deal with the stressors that we in the fire service face each and every day. And it was originally developed by the military to help returning veterans reintegrate into the community because of the post-traumatic stress and the things they saw when they were serving our country. And through the efforts of Vicki Taylor and Patricia Watson, who are also phenomenal ladies that do a lot in the behavioral health world, it was developed to create this program for the fire service. And pieces of that are used now throughout the country. And it's been adapted and modified, of course, but it's been used to really help bring a peer-based program into departments, and it's shown great success. And that's really the success of the IFF, is the peer-based programs that they have in place. And so I kind of tie all that together in, when Dr. Moore said, taking advantage of those tragedies and turning them into opportunities That sounds a little callous, but you have to do that. You have to strike when the iron is hot, no pun intended, but you have to really take advantage of the situation. So what we learned in New York for 9/11, what we learned in Charleston, has now become part of the model throughout the country. And I have to say IFF is leading the behavioral health components within the fire service community. The National Fallen Firefighters Foundation created the First Responder Center of Excellence to spread that word not only within the fire service, but to EMS personnel, to law enforcement, and sharing those ideas. So we see a continuing growth of the concerns about post-traumatic stress. So that's kind of the behavioral health component that I was asked to talk about and included in the One Voice that Vicki so courageously pushes everywhere she goes and talks about. But the other piece is the suicide, and that's something that, unfortunately doesn't always get talked about in open forums. And that is a significant issue within the fire service, and I know it's a significant issue in those individuals that have significant injuries when they try to reintegrate and it doesn't go as successful as they want. And for the foundation, we are working with that same group of subject matter experts in behavioral health to help deal with the suicide piece. The key is, and oftentimes we see this, when there's a firefighter suicide, we talk to the members in the station, and they say, I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to say. And so these programs are designed, and I hate to use this term from TSA, but if you see something, say something. That is the most critical point in peer intervention, is you have that inkling, but you're afraid that you might be wrong, but it'd be better to be wrong than have that person take their life. And so there's a lot of programming out pushing suicide prevention. The other piece, though, is that for the first time in the history of our country, the Public Safety Officer Benefit Program, which is the federal death benefit, is recognizing the traumatic occurrences within our industry of suicide related to post-traumatic stress in the industry, and they're being recognized as line-of-duty death firefighters, which helps the families. And as you talk about that, it's important to help those families to move forward, but it would be even better if we could get into the firefighters' life and support and help them without even having the suicide occur. So there's a lot of pieces there. They're all tied kind of together in survivor support, whether you're a burn survivor or you're a firefighter dealing with seeing the tragic things we see each and every day in our communities, often dealing with the very young and the very old. And I applaud anyone who has stepped up to the plate to be a firefighter, because it's rough out there. It's tough. There are so many things going on in our communities, whether it's shootings or it's fires or other tragic occurrences. And those men and women putting their lives on the line, whether career, volunteer, it doesn't matter. They're putting their lives on the line each and every day to keep our community safe. And so if you get a chance, I always say, if you see a firefighter, give them a hug, say thanks. But in return, the firefighters have stepped up significantly to help our survivors, our burn survivors. The relationship is so strong between the two that it's one big family. And that's the commitment that all the organizations have made relative to this endeavor. So thank you. I'll be here for questions. Probably went a little off script, but that's what firefighters do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom Flam. I am the IAFF Burn Coordinator. I have had the honor and privilege of having that particular job for almost a dozen years now. Before that, I actually had a short stint as a Chicago firefighter from about 30 years. I'd like to really thank our esteemed group of speakers here. They've certainly given an awful lot of credit and certainly some nice comments about the IAFF. And I'd like to make sure that everyone knows that our General President, Ed Kelly, would have liked to have been here. We have a executive board meeting going on actually this week, which prevented him from being here, and also Director of Health and Safety Operations, Sean DeCrane. So you're kind of stuck with me. Amy talked about our illustrious history, which goes back quite a few years. Yes, there are stories, but this is not the place to tell any of them. we've had really a good relationship for a long time. We've worked on several initiatives together over the years. We had firefighter peer support, which started back in 2009 with a meeting in Galveston that Phil Tomorrow, one of our burn coordinators, was also involved in. We have really a robust peer support in the burn community also. The Phoenix Society was certainly extremely helpful in helping us set that up along with some of our own members. I mentioned Phil being a coordinator, just so everyone knows. Our organization is divided into 16 districts. Each one of those districts has a burn coordinator, and we have several of them here, and we generally have several here at the event, which unfortunately hasn't been in person for 4 years. But we have Phil Tomorrow and Hunter Clare and Adam O'Blenis and Melissa Beard, and we also have our camp director in the room. We finished our 26th annual International Burn Camp last week. We started calling it our Young Burn Survivors Summit because we're trying to raise it, because it's not just a regular camp. There's a lot of different leadership qualities that are taught here, and certainly all of the historical and educational things that people are able to do here in the Washington, D.C. area, which is where we hold it. It's also worth knowing that one of the chaperones that we had here last week is also back this week. He's a firefighter from Boca Raton, Florida, and he's here with the young burn survivor that he spent a week with here, and they're here this week too. So it's great to see. I know that when I come here, I always manage to see a camper who went from age 15 or 16, now they're in their early 20s, and it's remarkable to see how they progress. And it's also nice to hear the comments that what you guys did made a difference. Some of the things that we work with in the ABA, we have actually done several projects with them. We have our firefighter burn injury survey that when a firefighter is injured and does end up in a burn center, there's a place under occupation where that's denoted, so we know it's a firefighter. We average about 50 firefighters per year who are admitted into burn centers around the U.S., and as several people alluded to earlier, one is too many and 50 is too damn many. So we're trying to do the best we can to work on that. We certainly have some of the best equipment that there is around. Unfortunately, it's a tool. People have talked about how fires burn more quickly. That's certainly an issue. We have so many issues out there that we're working on an emerging technologies grant, which goes into many of these things which are causing these incidents to be extremely more swiftly and rapidly spreading. We have lithium-ion batteries that are a big part of some of the large fires that Dr. Laurie talked about earlier. And we really enjoy having such great people that we get to work with. The Phoenix Society, the ABA. I've been a member of several committees, and I've been to 29 ABAs. Next year will be 30, which is about how long Amy and I have known each other. But again, no stories. I never told any of those stories. But I'd like to thank you all for coming and being here. This is always an event that I hold real high personally and professionally. I think it's a great event. And I get to see a lot of the friends that I've made over the years. And several are sitting out in the audience. So we're trying to do the best we can for all firefighters' health and safety. And You know, Ron talked about the cancer issue. It's a lot of different things that we work on that it's awful hard to condense in 2.5 minutes, especially when you're a blabbermouth. So thanks.
I always hate speaking after Tom because he's a real hard act to follow. My name's Rob Cartato. I'm a burn surgeon in Toronto, Canada, and I'm the president of the American Burn Association. This is my first Phoenix Burn. I'm getting a little choked up saying that. It's my first Phoenix Burn meeting, and it's been wonderful. It's been so enriching and rewarding, and I'm so glad I came. You know, as providers, and as Amy said, what has really changed is that many, many people are now surviving their burns. And so as providers, while we're interested in providing the best care possible to a burn patient, what's becoming apparent is really changing a little bit of our focus to that phase when a survivor leaves the hospital. There's so many problems. That transition alone out of the hospital into life and home and work, that transition alone is very, very difficult, we now realize. And we know burns are a chronic condition now, right? Every survivor in this room will tell you about pain, itch, tight scars, trouble regulating temperature, trouble sleeping, and then there's the whole host of mental health problems that can go along with this. So with that mindset, we actually had a research and advocacy summit here in DC one month ago, and there was really good representation from the Phoenix Society, Jill and Amy. And what came out loud and clear is that the burn survivor needs to be helping us inform the direction of our advocacy efforts. And so we are working on a new roadmap for advocacy by our association. And we want to absolutely have burn survivor support input into that, and we're working with that. I'm also very excited about a growing increase in the partnership between the American Burn Association and the Phoenix Society. I'm personally committed to that, and I know our Executive Director, Kim Horley, and Amy Acton are also very, very interested in that. So I'm really excited to see that develop in the future. We don't quite know what it's going to look like yet, but there's a firm commitment to make that partnership even stronger. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and once again, it's just a great meeting. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not dressed appropriately. This is one of my favorite jobs, though, to volunteer for the Phoenix Society, so I'm proud to wear it. My name is Gina Russo. I am a 20-year burn survivor from the Station nightclub fire. Some of you may have heard of it, maybe not. It was a very small nightclub in Rhode Island. A rock band decided to use some pyrotechnics, and it went really wrong. Really, really wrong. The building went up quickly and changed a lot of lives. We lost 100 people. I am very fortunate to be a survivor. I was burned over 40%. I spent about 6 weeks at Shriners Children's Hospital as an adult. And if it wasn't for them, I truly would not be standing or living. And then I spent the rest of my time at Massachusetts General Hospital, where I was in a medically induced coma for about 11 weeks. I spent a total of 4.5 months in that hospital. You never think you're going to survive this. And I remember my first 2 peer supporters walking in there, and they had just removed the trach, and they're telling me life's going to be great. I had a few choice words because I could talk. The trach was out. And they were so right. My life has gone in a direction I would have never dreamed of. So I will tell you that I love my life as a burn survivor. It has enabled me to meet the most incredible people, the friendships, the families that I now have that I didn't have before. I wouldn't change for the world. I've spent the last 20 years hoping and praying that what happened in Rhode Island will never happen again. And I've tried, and I've done so much public speaking, but it's still happening. And it happened a few years ago in Brazil, same exact fire that we had at the Station nightclub, except that was a concrete building and one exit, and they had no shot. They really didn't. They lost over 200 people and hundreds severely injured. This cannot keep happening. So, one voice, let me know where you need me, okay? Yeah. I have been given a platform to express what happened that night, but I do it mostly so our 100 that passed away never get forgotten. They were an incredible group of people who just went out to have a good time. We all did. Somehow, we survived, and we just got to make good on that. And we do it, I do it to honor them and all of the firefighters, the doctors, the nurses that thought my life was worth saving. I will do it till I can no longer, till someone says my time is up. Because being a burn survivor is unique and it's different and it's never going away. I've lost track of the surgeries after I got to 65 surgeries. I lost track. It wasn't worth it anymore. It doesn't go away, it doesn't end. But together, we all learn from each other through peer support, through the Phoenix Society. My first one was in 2004, a year after the fire, and it completely changed my outlook and the possibilities that I could live a good life, and I did. Got to watch my children grow up. They're now adult men. They got married. I'm a grandma, love every minute of it. Life is good, it's okay, but this is important. We cannot do this alone. And for all my firefighters, all of you out here, thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I really do have a great life. Thank you.
I'm Rob Feeney, and like Gina, I'm a survivor of the Station Nightclub fire, a burn survivor. And my journey is a bit of a strange one, I guess. I got connected early on with the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, kind of an experiment a few months after the nightclub fire, to see if we could bring survivors very soon after their fire to a world burn and start helping them, other than waiting years after what they had done in the past. And Amy saw something in me that it took me a long time to see, where I kept asking, why did this happen? You know, in my statements with the police departments and following the investigation, I was like, I thought there were sprinklers. I always thought there were sprinklers in a building like the Station nightclub. And found out there were not sprinklers. And I said, why not? Why did this happen? Why weren't there sprinklers? And at my first world burn and continuing on, I kept asking that message. I wanted answers. And Amy developed me into an advocate, which we joke about the Brad Phillips classes, where it seemed every year Amy asked me to attend Brad Phillips class and to tell her my story, talking to the media, and about the third or fourth time, I'm like, oh crap, she wants me to do this publicly. That's why I'm here. I was not the best student, but I started to, with Brad's help and Amy and Peg, Paul, and Vicky, fine-tune it. And after several years of doing that, Vicky calls me up and, I need you to come down in Chattanooga. Amy said that you're ready to talk. I'm like, what do you want me to say? And she goes, well, we have a city full of nightclubs that they don't want a sprinkler. We don't want another station. I'm like, well, you can't have another station. It's not acceptable. And I went down, I had a full speech prepared, and I get in there and the city council said, you have 3 minutes to talk. And basically put my speech away. And I was like, I understand I have 3 minutes to speak today. Just so you know, about 96 people died in 3 minutes. And out of the 100 in the Station nightclub fire. And they didn't shut me up. I took about 12 minutes, said everything I wanted to do. And a couple hours later, after they deliberated, they came out and they said, it passed. And it passed by one vote. And that one vote was because of one voice, mine. And since Chattanooga, I've had the honor to speak for NFSA, Phoenix Society, Common Voices, the NFPA, and travel the country. And my main audience was the fire service. And I realized I'm talking to fire marshals and fire inspectors and everyone who knows a job I've never done, never wanted to do. But I'm like, why am I telling them how to do a job I don't know? And an opportunity came back home to become a call firefighter. And my wife and my girlfriend at the time, I was working as a reserve police officer, which was my dream. And she's like, it seems better than, running into domestics and risk getting shot at. She's like, just go in. And I said, sure, I'll go in a burning building again. I'm dumb enough. So I gave it a shot. And over the years, we talk about the journey. I wore this not to be a fire official, but to symbolize like where my journey is now. So I went from speaking to firefighters, becoming a call firefighter, working up to a fire prevention, to a career captain. And it's, who knows where it is next, but it's my voice, Gina's voice, every voice here. Individually, it's one. Collectively, we're one with the same message. And now that I'm in the fire side, I see their side of it. I see the political side of it. I see the inspection side and the codes. And I've had to learn to separate the passion for it, to work with the codes to get things done. But it's still pulling everyone together, one voice, one cause, and we're all on the one journey. And collectively, we can make it happen. We can get that Fire Safe America. Thank you.
Well, that about sums it up, I think. But I wanted to open it up for any questions or comments or thoughts from the community.
Yeah. So I didn't become a nurse until I was 55. For strange reasons, I ended up in a burn ICU. But before I was a nurse, I was a plumber and loved plumbing, right? And I will tell you that the voices against what you guys said are really well organized. Because what I did construction, right? And when everybody complained about the convoluted nature of the language of the bills and the codes and the expense. And so that was pretty ubiquitous on all the construction sites. But not just that. I mean, when you hear about this kind of stuff in politicians talking about it, it's expense, like there's so much expense, and then the language of codes. Why are you not louder than that? Like, what is the problem? I don't know, like, this is such a better story, it's such a better argument. I don't understand why that other side gets so much traction.
I can jump in. To start, follow the money. If you look at the
money, I can't give them money.
yeah, and that's a state fire marshal. But that's what we're up against. In fact, there's a great piece that was done a number of years ago by ProPublica magazine on how many millions and millions of dollars have been spent by the building industry to thwart installation of home fire sprinklers. They have basically lobbied them out of requirements in almost every state across the country. So we're working really hard to circumvent that through education and incentive programs to make sure that people know the value of sprinklers and that there are other ways that they can get sprinklers into new homes, that even if they're not in their code requirements. But it's a very simple answer and unfortunately a very stiff opposition. You're right about them being incredibly not only well organized but well financed.
I think I'm going to add to, I think, some of the data we need to show the true cost of the fires beyond property, beyond maybe a death. But this cost, we don't have good data yet. And I know Dr. Lori Moore is working on stronger data for us to understand and be able to have data to back up our story as well.
That's very good, Amy. I think that the data issue is a problem. We are going to get a handle on that, but near having real-time information about what is the story, how many fires are there, how many injuries are there, how many deaths are there, where did it happen, what was the building materials. These are all things that would bolster our story, but the things, and that's coming. The thing that I see around what you just said, and you said incredibly well organized, well, the fire service has not been. And so we were all these national organizations were each very passionate about their own message, But collectively, we have come to the understanding that we can do so much more, because what you just said matters. It matters certainly to NFPA and FSA, but it matters to the IFF too, because the safer I make the structure, even if it's on fire, the lower the risk for the firefighter making entry. The longer you have to survive. So everything changes if we could get these things in place. And so we are coming to tell our own story again, but now as one voice around a mission in this space. But it's relevant to all of us. So I will say that has been part of our issue as well.
Another thing to that, for your information, is they were just as passionate, they being the opposition, against smoke alarms back in the day. We have actually found documents that all they did was change the word from smoke alarm to fire sprinkler. True story. Right, from the 1970s to present. So I do think that what Dr. Lori has referenced is going to make a difference. We have never been this united, so we are getting ourselves organized in a way that we've never been organized before. Now, if we can just find the money.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts? All right. Well, again, I just want to end by thanking.
She had
Oh,
one.
got one.
I was just gonna say that this should be a general session for,
Next
all
year, guys,
survivors.
same place, same time.
So I just
Next-
wanna say, excellent job, everyone. It's gotten us all charged up.
Yeah.
And I'm burned, so I
Well, she's recently retired, so she's going to be busy. We'll figure out how to get her one voice out there. But again, I echo, there are things that we've accomplished in the past. Fire Safe Cigarette was one of them. That was a hugely funded opposition to that effort. And actually, the home builders, I think, took some lessons from that and flipped it on us at the state-by-state removal of the code. But again, adding this voice, I think, is going to make a really big difference. And I'm really committed to working with one voice and how Phoenix Society can help mobilize and connect, as a convener and connector, multiple burn foundations, multiple burn centers that we work with. We work with 85 burn centers with our SOAR program, where we have trained peer supporters that are ready to tell their story. We've done advocacy training in the past, so those are things that I think we can add and help mobilize this community to add that voice. Because if we all go marching up to the state capitals, that's a little different, because it's hard to look away from the tragedies that are standing right before you. And it's a strong voice, and yes, there were tragedies, and yes, we're going beyond that, but we have to use our story in that way to make change. So thank you for being here. I know you kind of took out of your lunch hour, but I appreciate you being here. Enjoy your other session.